I am here with Dani Elliott. Dani, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I'm excited to be here.
Very, very good. So tell us, how did you get started being a backup vocalist?
I went to the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York, got my degree as a jazz vocalist, and then quickly realized I could not pay my bills that way. Living in New York City, and I had been watching some singers at this club I used to play at a lot called Rockwood Music Hall, and I started meeting more people, going out to shows, and I heard them talking about doing backing vocals, and I was like, I grew up in church, like singing in groups like all the time, and I love singing harmony. Maybe this is something that I could be good at, and so I just started asking people if I could sing with them like for free at places like Rockwood, just to kind of get my feet wet and get experience. And then I eventually started hearing about auditions. And then once I started auditioning enough and actually landing jobs, then I started getting referred for things, and it kind of took off from there. So really all meeting people, building community, that was like the biggest part of getting into it.
That's an interesting thing you bring up, because going out and playing for free and showcasing, some musicians, there's a bit of a controversy about that, but at some point you really do have to just go out and sing.
Yeah, you really do. And, at that point, I didn't really know a ton of people. And so there wasn't really an opportunity for me to sing in general, unless I just kind of offered myself up and went up to people and was like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I want to be doing. And, eventually it will lead to money. And by no means am I saying play for free or lowball gigs so that we bring everyone else's pay down. But I think when you're first starting out and you don't know anyone, offering your services for free for a limited period of time can be a great way to just, again, like get experience and meet people.
Absolutely. So what was your first big tour, the tour where you went, wow, this is something?
Yeah. I guess my first big tour was a band called Wheatus. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They had a really big song called Teenage Dirtbag back in the early 2000s. And so we recorded a record, and then we did a tour all over the UK for 30 days. And I think we played 27 shows in 30 days. And we were setting up all of our gear and everything ourselves. Like, we had no tech team basically. So I learned how to do all of that. So you're set up, sound check, tear down. And these sound checks were like 2-hour sound checks too. We're basically playing like the whole show. So a great thing about it is it got me vocally in shape, because I was just singing a lot. And I learned a lot about touring, about like the technical side of how a lot of the behind the scenes stuff worked. And it was stressful. I mean, we had like a £5 per day per diem, which you cannot live on.
That's like a Starbucks.
Yeah, barely. And so I was really living on our green room food. So like gummy bears and crackers and, like cold sandwiches. But, when you're like 23, 24, you're okay with that. And, at the time it was stressful, but it was an incredible experience. Like, I had never been to Europe before that, back when, the UK was still part of Europe, RIP, but
yeah.
Right. But, it was a blast. I got to see so much, and the crowds were, like small, but mighty. Like, they were so into it, and it was a blast. Yeah. That was my first big one.
And what really surprised you most as you got into touring, something that you really didn't expect?
I'd say the mental health aspect of it, really, and all of the changes that how quickly your mental health can change. I think you need to kind of be an island unto yourself in a healthy way, because there's so much moving around you, and to be able to have tools in your mental tool belt to kind of keep yourself grounded is really helpful. And I think it took me a minute to even recognize that was something that was kind of an issue for me, because you eventually hopefully land some of these tours and you start working and you're finally able to pay your bills, like making music, you're seeing the world, and you're like, what's not to like? This is the dream job, right? And then you start to recognize like, oh, like not everybody like, you know, has their life together and they're taking it out on on their bandmates, or somebody isn't doing a good job like tour managing you and it's making your life really like stressful, or you know, it can, even though you're around people all the time, it can also be really lonely as well, especially if you're traveling through time zones that are like very far away from friends and family, which makes it difficult to talk to the people that are usually constants in your life. So I think like getting into therapy, having certain tools that I could kind of draw on when I was away, that definitely helped me be able to stay consistent mentally and vocally, and just in my overall health while being on the road.
Yeah, and they're all connected, because your physical health, I think, is a real challenge on the road, because you're traveling, you're tired, you're going through different time zones. You can't always source really healthy food, which they're now starting to see can affect your mental health. So even just something like making sure you're able to eat healthy, is that something that you really have to plan for and be proactive about?
Oh, for sure. And in my case, particularly, like I have an autoimmune disease. And so I have noticed that mind-gut connection. If I'm not eating the way I need to eat, I definitely feel it physically and I notice it mentally as well. And so by the end of the time I was touring, I would make sure that I would kind of research like, okay, what grocery stores are around? Let me set aside money to go get my own set of like healthy snacks and like squirrel those away in my bunk on the bus so no one knows they exist and we'll dip into them. Or, you know, as the budgets get bigger with tours, you can also give your dietary like requests as well. Like, hey, these are the certain things that I'm not eating, and they'll make sure that catering has that available to you. But that's a very lucky position to be in. But I think it's just kind of preparing as much as you can for like each place you're going to be in, and trying to make the best of what you have to work with, and make good decisions, and not just be like, well, these chips are here, so I'm just going to like grab this and do it, you know? So yeah, but it is difficult, especially the smaller, like towns and cities that you go to can be real food deserts. So it can be difficult to do that. But also like your supplement game, I think can be really helpful too, knowing what supplements help keep your immune system up. And you can always have that on you no matter where you go if you plan for it.
Yeah, I remember being in a city in Eastern Europe, and the hotel had the continental breakfast, right? And I go down and it's hot dogs floating in water.
Oh, rough.
So it's like, yeah, you need to make sure you figure out where you can source this, and then sleep. I think you almost need to train yourself and work at having good sleep skills.
Oof, yeah, that is for sure, especially as a singer. You know, I think being a singer in a touring band is, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it's the hardest job in the band, because your instrument is so susceptible to fluctuation. You know, you can't just go out and buy another set of drumsticks if you crack one. You can't go buy more guitar strings. Like this is it, you know? And so you have to say no to doing social things that the rest of the band is going to do. You can't drink the same way they are, certainly not smoking. If I wanted to go out and be social, I would have to look at the schedule and be like, okay, if I decide I'm going to stay out late this night and my voice is going to get tired from like having just done a show, and I'm going to go talk to people in a bar, I need at least like 2 days off before I have to sing again. If I don't have that in the schedule, I'm not going out, because it's not worth me losing my job if I can't sing. So knowing what your limits are, I think is super important to sustainability on the road too. But sleep, for sure, like I was usually the first one in my bunk at night, and just like headphones, lights off, everyone please be quiet. Which,
Yeah.
it just has to happen.
If we don't get proper sleep, if we don't take care of ourselves, we deal with body inflammation, and that inflammation goes to our vocal cords.
Yes.
Whereas the drummer, if the drummer's feeling some body inflammation, who cares? Because it doesn't really impact their ability to play. Because even though it's a very physical instrument, it's not the same.
It's not, of course, if you have something like arthritis, that's a different story, right? But like when we're talking about low grade inflammation or something, yeah, it's just not the same. And I would definitely notice differences if I was a little less responsible with my vocal or like overall health care on the road versus when I kind of really kept it together. And also, just like as you age as well, I noticed I couldn't get away with doing certain things the older I got versus like in my early 20s. It just, things change, and you kind of have to adapt to that health wise as well if you want to be able to do the amount of singing that's required of you when you're doing a tour or doing a record or an intense day of session work.
Yeah, that little magic window where you can fool around and you don't have to find out.
Right. It's so true.
And that door closes pretty quick. Yeah.
Oh, fast. I miss that door being open.
Out.
Truly. Yeah.
So you've worked with some incredibly successful artists. What are some common things as you've worked with people on this level that you see that kind of where you go, yeah, that's why they're successful?
Man, well, I'll take someone like Sheryl Crow. She is just the best in every way you could possibly imagine. And I think someone like her too, it's like she is one of the rare instances that made a successful transition from backing singer to artist, right? And she was a music teacher before that as well. So it's like she really understands the life of a side person, and somebody who has done something to support their art. And I think people who have that kind of connection to reality, it just makes working with them that much easier. In addition to that, obviously a very skilled multi-instrumentalist and can speak to you in musical terms. And so that, just for efficiency's sake, makes rehearsals, sound checks go much faster because you're like, oh, I know exactly what she wants because she's able to clearly verbalize that to me. She treats everyone really fairly, looks you in the eyes when she talks to you, just treats you like you're a human being. And I think that I've been really lucky to work with a lot of great artists who have a lot of those qualities, and that's why they have become successful and then stayed successful, because they're not jerks, basically.
Yeah, and it helps that she's a brilliant artist.
Such a great artist and so much fun to sing with. I just remember the first time my career has been really interesting in that I usually end up having to take over for someone because they've like moved on to another job or something has happened, and like I don't end up getting like a rehearsal or anything. I just get sent the music and then I walk on stage, and like that's my first experience. And I remember she was just so kind, and I was doing this like 2-song run through and was like, I can't believe I get to sing with this legendary artist. And it just felt easy because she was just so good at what she did, but that's another part of backing vocals too. It's like really knowing the music and getting it in your body so that you can sing it like it's like you've been singing it for a long time. I was on tour with another artist, right? And I went direct from that tour to tour with Cheryl, and they had sent me the board recordings before that. And I just would immediately after every show leading up to going to that tour, I was listening to that music constantly, so that it was just memorized and like fully in my body, so I could walk on stage and make it seem like that's something I'd just been in the band the whole time. But I think that's also a great skill to take into backing vocal auditions as well. I did an audition a couple years ago actually, and singers were coming in with their phones and like reading lyrics off the phones, and I'm like, we had 3 days to learn this music, like why are you on your phone? And I didn't end up booking the job, but it came down to me and one other person out of like dozens of other people that auditioned, and I was like, well, that speaks enough right there. I think that's probably one of the things, because I made it feel lived in to even get that far in the audition process, and so I think, yeah, whether you have the job or whether you're working towards the job, just getting the music in your body and getting it in your ears is super important to just make it feel cohesive.
There's a lot of important truth there, because the bottom line is, for any job, there are a lot of singers, more than enough singers that can sing the job.
Yeah.
There are plenty of great singers out there. So what is it that's going to set you apart? You're prepared, you're always on time, and you get along with people.
Yes, for sure. Those three things, 100%. Yeah, because it's expected of you at a certain point that you're going to be able to do the job. Like, that's not even a question, but it's like, are you prepared and are you a good hang? That's like 90% of it.
And then being a singer, it's kind of hard because you can't always hang out. We have to be careful how much we use our voice when we're tired, etc. So how do you strike that balance between, I need to go to bed early, I can't always be social, but I'm not being rude?
Yeah, I think I would just be really strategic with when I decided to do hangs. I think if it was somebody that, like an artist that I was still new to working with, I would try to make the hang a little bit more just to build that relationship with them and show them that I wasn't being antisocial. But I usually didn't stay around as late as everyone else. Like, I would kind of show my face and be like, oh, we're here, we're having a good time, and slowly, like, Irish goodbye, like out the back door. And then but sometimes there are just some non-negotiables. It's like, if we were going to have a really brutal travel day coming up, and I knew I was going to be on and off planes that were going to be like drying my voice out, and coming off having just done a show, I wasn't going to go out to like a bar the night before and be yelling over music and then be in like a dehydrated environment. And then, so I think it's just being strategic with when you decide to be social. And then even, when you're on the job, like we just said, being a good hang, you can be social in a professional way when you're on the job too. And it doesn't just have to be like socializing is just for socializing, working isn't just for working. And I think in music too, a lot of that kind of blends together anyway, because hopefully you're having a great time. It's music. Like, music is your job. What's not to love, right?
Yeah. And if you're really professional, you're going to be recommended.
Yeah. For sure. And that's where I think, you'll get auditions for things, but a lot of it comes down to referrals as well. And so really building your community is super important. Like I had said when we first started talking, like, I would just spend probably at least 4 nights a week going out to shows in New York when I lived in New York at all these different clubs, just meeting everyone, saying yes to everything. I don't necessarily recommend saying yes to everything now that I've learned how to better kind of read people and protect my time. But just being open, I think, is the point to meeting people, because you just never know where your next call is going to come from, like, for example, I had been up for the Katy Perry tour like multiple times, never ended up getting it, but I went out to this ASCAP conference for songwriters years ago, and I overheard a girl saying she sang backing vocals for Natasha Bedingfield. And so I went up to her and was like, hey, I'm sorry to eavesdrop. I heard you said you do backing vocals, and I'm trying to get into doing backing vocals. I'd love to talk with you about that. We became friends. I then got invited to audition for Mary J. Blige. This girl I met at the conference ends up being at the Mary J. Blige audition. She introduces me to someone who I would become even better friends with, who ended up being Katy Perry's backing singer for 8 years. And she got me an audition like 3 times with Katy. So it's like, and again, with Katy, it was like came down to like me and one other person each time. And so it's like, you just never know who is going to introduce you, and to just stay open to making friends, because it's like any great relationship could be just around the corner, and any professional opportunity could just be around the corner too.
Dani, where can people find out more about you?
You can find me on at Dani Official on Instagram, and that's at DAANI Official, and also over at my podcast, First Time for Everything. We talk about music, we talk about singing, we talk about whole lots of first times, and yeah, I'll just be talking over there.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great.